So recently I played Silent Hill 2 for the first time. Ever since the remake came out, I've been seeing a lot of Silent Hill content on the internet. Particularly, I watched Vinesauce's VODs, and it convinced me to finally play the game for myself. Not the remake, though. I was interested in the original, and not because the remake is woke or anything. It isn't. No, I wanted to play the original because the remake is basically a different game. I wanted to see what I thought about the original's gameplay, story, graphics, etc. before seeing what I think about the remake. I had already heard about the old Silent Hill games and other survival horrors like it, mainly through Nitro Rad's channel. Those videos made me wonder what the games were like, and when I saw the Pyramid Head scene in the remake and looked up the original game's version to compare the two, something about the graphics and presentation of the original clicked with me, I guess you could say. So I decided to get the original Silent Hill 2 and play it for myself. Unfortunately, the only two ways to do so is to either buy a physical disc for over $100 on eBay, or don't. Technically there is a third way to do it, which is getting the HD collection, but the HD collection is fucked up, so I didn't want to do that. For some reason, you can't just buy these games on Steam, even though I can get Silent Hill 1 on the PS3 store for $6 to this day. Hell, I was actually about to do that, but you can't add money to the PS3 store anymore, which just makes it even more baffling. Why can't I get these games on Steam, or any other digital storefront for that matter? Konami, I thought you liked money. Anyways, before we start, I want to specify some things. First, this isn't a review. I won't summarize the story or gameplay, and will assume that you already know most of that. But that's not to say this will be spoiler-free, so here's your one warning. Why are you giving a spoiler warning for a game released in 2001? Because I was born in 2006. Second, I emulated the PS2 version and played on normal combat and puzzle difficulty. Third, I only thought to record my gameplay halfway through the hospital, and I had to use some of the extra game footage to fill in what I was missing. Because of that, I'm going to use some footage from other sources for this video. I'll credit any footage I didn't record on the screen. Fourth, I had the brightness set to 1 at first, and only turned it up later when I realized I couldn't see the footage very well. So sorry if the screen just looks black most of the time. The reason I turned the brightness to 1 was because with it turned higher, I had trouble imagining that it was actually too dark for James to see without the flashlight. With all that said, let's begin. Since I've mainly heard Nitro Rad talk about these games, I decided to keep tank controls, or 3D controls, on, as those are better suited for the fixed camera angles. They were weird at first, but it didn't take long for me to get accustomed to them. I never stopped bumping into things and turning around awkwardly, but I don't think that the tank controls are bad. To me, it's just how this game controls, which I'm fine with. I didn't like going up the stairs in the hospital, though. Also, sorry if I end up mentioning Nitro Rad too much, but I really don't watch all that many other channels that talk about Silent Hill and horror games like that. So it's basically my only idea of what people think of these games. The way I've always heard the game's combat described was resource management. You have to keep your health up, save ammo, ration health items, and manage key items for puzzles.
In Silent Hill, you have to make a split-second choice. Do I run from this thing? Do I risk taking it out with a melee weapon? Or do I shoot at it, depleting some of my ammunition?
Because of this, I assumed there would be a way to switch between ranged and melee weapons on the fly, so that whenever you felt like you could take on an enemy with just the wooden plank, you wouldn't have to waste bullets or waste time switching weapons in the pause menu. As it turns out, there isn't, but if you press the attack button while standing still next to a downed enemy, you can instantly kill them with a stomp. I didn't really like this, not only because I didn't realize how to stomp until looking it up when trying to figure out if there was a way to swap between weapons, but I also think having a guaranteed kill move takes some of the tension out of combat. You know, before I got the pistol, trying to kill an enemy was terrifying because I didn't know for sure if they were dead or not until I saw the blood puddle leak out on the ground. Now I knew as soon as I stepped onto their heads they were dead. It also made getting the pipe to replace the plank feel useless, since I wasn't really using melee weapons much anyway. place, since guns were just the better option. The shotgun and rifle do help though. With how long it takes to recover from firing, trying to stomp an enemy's head before they get up does feel more tense. It also helps whenever there's multiple enemies to deal with. I liked the combat overall though, even with how simple and clunky it is. There's better combat systems out there, but figuring out how to fight an enemy without taking damage or using too many resources is satisfying enough for me to not care most of the time. It reminds me of Eco and how the combat is less about being fun and more about how they use the mechanics to direct your thoughts and feelings. That's not to say the combat of either game is bad, but let's just say you couldn't have an endless enemy horde mode in them, and you definitely couldn't have a boss rush in them, I mean, Jesus. In Eco, you're to getting kidnapped is the only fail state in battle since you don't have a health system, which means all your thoughts during the battle are, "Give me back Yorda, you bird bastard! Don't grab her! Oh, please don't go in the hole, no! Okay, good." In Silent Hill 2, the radio going off whenever something's close, the way the camera swings around wildly when you try to look for enemies, the fog and darkness coating the area, the scarcity of healing items. At least I thought there was a scarcity because I didn't find most of them at the start of the game, which is probably why I got the water ending. And the clunky combat all combined to make you think, an enemy's here? Oh shit, where? I can't see it. Oh, there it is. Shoot it, stomp it, there we go. Ah, thank God. Oh shit! I think the important thing to keep in mind with Silent Hill is that it's a horror game. The combat is meant to scare you, and it's much easier to appreciate it when looking at it through that lens. I'm mixed on the bosses of the game. Most of them kind of sucked, and the final boss really sucked, but I thought the Flesh Lips battle was cool, although it's kind of for a stupid reason. See, when I fought the Flesh Lips for the first time, I didn't realize that my health was super low, and so I thought that their strangle attack was an instant kill. Because of this, I decided to throw everything I had at them, and ended up using all of my ammo. I had to finish it off with the steel pipe, which I was actually happy about because I didn't really have a reason to use the steel pipe beforehand. It's pretty funny considering that's the exact scenario that led to Jerma's meat grinder rant.
If I were to put you in a meat grinder!
Because of that encounter, I can see a benefit to having bosses in a survival horror game as a way to make the players panic and use up resources out of fear, as fear and panic is exactly what the games want you to feel. As the bosses are in Silent Hill so far though, I think there's better ways to achieve that. Putting the player in an arena with a big monster to fight doesn't really work all that well in a tank-controlled game. To go back to what I said about how Silent Hill and Eco's combat wouldn't work with something like DMC's Bloody Palace, I think that the bosses push the comfort zone of Silent Hill's combat. It doesn't work well with epic encounters, and that's what the bosses feel like they're meant to be. I also had a problem like this with Eco. There's two areas in the game that have a bunch of enemies in it, and I feel like Eco's combat doesn't work nearly as well when you're fighting waves of enemies. Having to fight a bunch of enemies in one encounter really highlights how simple and repetitive the combat is. Maybe a better thing would be to have larger, unique monsters that sort of act like bosses but just roam around the area or track you down. Basically Mr. X from the RE2 remake, except you can kill him at any time and not just in a boss battle. For example, imagine if near the end of the apartments, Pyramid Head started to roam the halls. He would be killable, and he would be in the way enough for the player to consider it, but running would still be the best option. Killing him could be optional or required, but the battle might feel less weird without the game forcing you into a room to fight him. On the other hand, without any required boss battles, the player might have less of a reason to save up on resources. I'll probably talk more about this idea when I talk about Silent Hill 4, since I know that game has stalker enemies. Anyways, back on topic. I had heard that all the bosses in this game are on a timer, and attacking them just speeds it up, but I didn't know about that, so I thought I had to kill them. Except for the first battle against Pyramid Head, I had heard that you can just wait until he leaves, but I misremembered it and thought that he was invulnerable to attacks. And can you really blame me when a good chunk of him is covered by a giant metal pyramid? Shooting him, I did notice that he slowed down, but it kinda just seemed like the pyramid was deflecting my bullets, so I figured it really didn't matter. Overall, I think the bosses can add something to the game, although maybe they should work differently. I should mention that I never got the hang of the strafe buttons when playing this game, and if you look up videos of no damage runs, you'll notice that James circles around the bosses and dodges all their attacks effortlessly. This means that the bosses are probably better if you know how to effectively use the tank controls, or if you just want to switch to analog controls during the bosses. My excuse for not learning how to strafe is that the layout of the controls are kinda weird. Up and down on the D-pad let you walk forwards and back respectively, but left and right make you turn left and right. The shoulder buttons let you strafe left and right, but pressing both at once will make you do an 180-degree turn. Wouldn't it make more sense for the shoulder buttons to turn you left and right, and for left and right on the D-pad to let you strafe? That way, all movement is on the D-pad, and all the turning is on the shoulder buttons. I won't know for sure until I get a chance to actually control a game like that. Oh wait, I can just remap the controls. Okay, I played a bit of the game with this new control scheme. Unfortunately, I couldn't use the quick turn since it got mapped to the D-pad along with the strafe buttons, and it's impossible to press opposite directions on a D-pad at the same time. By this point, I was already used to the normal controls and had to adjust to these new ones, but maybe I would get the hang of these easier if the game controlled like this from the start. Having all the directional movement on the D-pad made me expect it to work like analog controls, which is to say that your movement direction is relative to where the camera's facing instead of where the character's facing. For example, at one point I tried walking to my left, but walked backwards instead, because down was the direction I would have pressed in any other game. Overall, this was a fun experiment, but really I should just get better at strafing. I'm not going to talk about the puzzles, because the only one I remember is the coin puzzle, and that one was just kinda boring. What I do remember is that putting in and taking out the coins is really slow. The graphics were the initial thing that made me want to play the original, so let's compare that to the remake, because if I tried to talk about the graphics by themselves, I won't really know what to say. It's kind of silly for me to talk about a game I haven't played, but I have seen what it looks like, and that should be enough for me to be able to talk about what it looks like. I did notice some things about the remake's graphics that bothered me, so let's see if I can try and figure out my opinions on it. Due to being a PS5 game using Unreal Engine 5, the remake is very detailed and realistic looking, so I feel like its graphics are a downgrade from the original, mainly with the Otherworld segments. Something about the original textures look much more grimy and gory than the remake, though I don't know why. I don't want to say that it's because the lower end graphics make you use your imagination more and lets you fill in all the missing details with something worse than the designers could possibly think of. Because actually playing the game, I don't really find myself questioning what I'm looking at most of the time, and the remake doesn't give me any better of an idea, so I don't think any vagueness is lost with the better graphics. I didn't go around the game saying to myself, man, is that blood on the walls or just lasagna? No, I'm playing a horror game, it's obviously blood. Or rust. I mean, it is hard to tell, I admit, but I fucking know it's not marinara sauce. Besides, I think more detail can be good for a horror game. Scorn's biomechanical environments are so detailed and realistic that I actually fucking hate looking at it, and refuse to get any visuals of the game for this part. I hated even getting a clip of Jerma saying Scorn for a joke, so sorry about the music in the background of it, but like, I fucking hate the way that game looks. Compare that to the abstract daddy boss room, where the walls are clearly some kind of flesh, but the room is very flat overall, which makes it hard to ignore that it's just polygons with textures on top. The remake could have added more depth to that room to make it even creepier, but instead the battle takes place within Angela's house, which looks pretty normal overall. The piston walls are still present in the game, but they look more like skin stitched together instead of whatever was going on with the original. The battle taking place in Angela's house is actually a design I much prefer to the original, because of the way it turns the gameplay into something that can tell the story of Angela by making you experience the fear that she did whenever her father was at home. So I think this is actually a cooler way to do the battle. It's just a little disappointing to see the original room gone, that's all. But let's pivot away from this gross flesh wall stuff by talking about toilets. From what I've seen, most people playing the remake assume that the toilet that James sticks his hand in is filled with shit.
Why, James? Why? Why do you need to do this? You don't need to do this. Ugh. Old James shitty hands.
This is a perfectly reasonable assumption, though when I played the original I interpreted the contents as something gorier. Blood, guts, rust, maybe shit as well. Maybe the person who lived there had a really bad bowel movement. Maybe somebody put a dead cat in there. I said I don't think vagueness has anything to do with the original graphics being better, though I really can't describe this toilet without mentioning how I can't tell for sure what the hell's in it. However, the remake's issue with the toilet isn't that it's too obviously guts or blood or whatever, but that it lacks that feeling of being gory at all, even though from what I can tell it's actually a faithful recreation of the original. I think the modern lighting and the brown stain on James's hand afterwards make it seem too much like normal shit for people to really have any reason to think it's something worse. Which is unfortunate because the original toilet is really disgusting. Just about every Otherworld part looks a bit too clean now as well, though comparing the two side by side, they do seem equally grimy, so I'm not sure why I think that. It might be that the high contrast textures of the original gave a more visceral look to the Otherworld, or perhaps everything looks too smooth now. Or it's just the lighting. I think the original lighting meant that the colors of the textures were more intact, even if the lights were different colors. Which means that the red, white, and yellow got to stand out in contrast with each other. The modern lighting seems to unite everything under the color and strength of the light sources, resulting in places like the Historical Society just looking gray and muddy, as opposed to the original's oppressive rotten rust. Even though the remake's walls are just as grimy and vague, dripping with some unidentifiable substance. As I was getting footage for this part, I noticed how the save point in the hospital's Otherworld looked compared to the original. For some reason they got rid of the fleshy cavity in this wall, and now it just looks like a normal mechanical fan. So I definitely know what the problem is here, they got rid of the flesh wall. Actually, on closer inspection, I think the flesh is actually just curtains. That would mean that the remake actually faithfully recreates this fan, and that vagueness does add to the horror scene as I mistook the curtains for something worse. But even then, it doesn't really make me appreciate vague graphics as a way to make things scarier. I'm not impressed that the low quality graphics made me mistake curtains for flesh. I'm pissed off that the area might actually be something as lame as that. Like, come on, I thought this wall was made out of an otherworldly colon with a metal fan in the center, and it's actually just fabric? That sucks. I'm also starting to doubt that the toilet is gory either. Was it just slightly redder in the original, and maybe my mind just filled in the rest? Let's just move on from the environment design altogether. Hey, do you like cans? No? Well then, maybe I can interest you in the Uncanny Valley. You'll never find cans here, just weird creepy shit. The game's voice acting was intentionally bad to make cutscenes feel off-putting. I don't really think it works, at least not for me. Maybe my opinion would be different if I watched David Lynch's films, as those were a big inspiration for Silent Hill's cutscenes. The only lines I really remember the delivery of are the ones that sound funny to me. I am never going to say what the normally again after this game.
What the?
This town is full of monsters. How can you sit there and eat peanuts?
The thing that I find uncanny about these cutscenes isn't the voice acting, but the pre-rendered character models. Obviously their skin looks a bit plastic-like, but what I want to know is where are their eyebrows? I think it's just that most of the characters are blonde and so their light hair blends in with their light skin, but it still makes them look freaky, you know, just like real blonde people. This all reaches its peak when you find Eddie in the Historical Society. I mean, look at him.
Killing a person ain't no big deal. Just put the gun to their head.
I don't even know what to say, just look at him. I think the reason the lack of eyebrows makes him look so deranged here is that there's nothing to add complexion or depth to his expression. It's just wide open eyes. I remember how one of my characters was pretty hard to draw when I redesigned him to have eyebrows, because with them, I couldn't replicate his neutral expression. Every slightly different place I positioned his eyebrows, he would look sad, scared, angry, or happy, rather than just neutral. This is a horror game, so I really should talk about how scary it is. As I mentioned earlier, I saw Scorn and really didn't like the way it looked, to the point where I could barely even stand clips of Jerma doing goofy-ass stuff in it. Because of that, I figured any game that didn't have a biomechanical art style wouldn't be able to scare me, at least not enough to keep me up at night. I said earlier that the combat mechanics make you scared of even fighting enemies, especially when you're poorly equipped at the beginning. The game will also play sounds in certain rooms to scare you, like for instance this weird pig squeal sound. they'll also use music to scare you, not by playing a horror steamer, but by messing with your expectations. Most areas in the game are silent, save for some ambient noises, and the music only really plays when enemies are nearby. Some rooms, however, will play music, despite not having enemies, and even though I know nothing will happen, the presence of music puts me on edge and makes me want to leave as soon as possible. The monster designs didn't really scare me when playing the game, but reading Bogleech's analysis of them made up for that. The enemies are mainly creepy when going into detail about them, like how the bubblehead nurses are apparently suffocating in the thing on their head. I actually managed to convince myself that I wasn't scared of the game. That is, until the Historical Society. This entire area just feels like I'm falling down a rabbit hole. You go down a super long staircase, jump down countless holes, and who knows how far down each of those take you. And after the 5th or 6th hole, you find an elevator that takes you back up
right down to the labyrinth. A maze of generic office hallways where you encounter 3 pyramid heads, a rotating room puzzle, Maria who's just in like a prison cell for some reason, and the abstract daddy.
Yes, that's its real name. That was really the thing that scared me the most about this area, knowing that bastard was coming up. God, do I even have to explain why that thing scares me? Let's just not talk about it, because I also don't know really what to say with that subject matter. But there's plenty of other things that got me as well, like the siren in this room, or all the flavor text in the morgue. The very first hole you jump into lands you in a well with no way out. Obviously there is a way to get out, but I'm scared enough by the idea of being trapped in a place like this. You get trapped in a room full of bugs as well. That did scare me, but it took me long enough to figure out how to get out to where I just kind of became bored with it. Not that I got pissed off at it, but it just goes to show that horror games have to walk a very fine line on how difficult or cryptic they need to be, and how long their scares can last. Too easy and short, they won't be scary. Too hard and long, and they become annoying. Anyways, what was I talking about? Oh, piss off! The random sounds that play to scare you are plentiful in this area. One of them is actually turned into an enemy that you can kill, though I didn't find this out in my playthrough. There's these invisible enemies that say ritual. Though I didn't have the volume up very high when I played it, and I thought they were just shushing me. Still creeped me out. The Lakeview Hotel was also pretty creepy, mainly because of how silent it was, and once again the dread of what I knew would eventually happen in it. Also, this mannequin in the basement. That made me jump. So yes, Silent Hill 2 is scary, who could have guessed. But you know what's really horrifying? Politics. God, this segue sucks. I'm sorry, I couldn't think of anything else. I'm not even sure how I should say this, or if I should say this. I mean, I haven't even played the remake, and yeah, I want to complain about people's opinions of it. Well, people have said that the remake designs are woke, and I think that's stupid. But I want to try and reason with them rather than insulting them and acting like I'm always right, because shit like that is why I stopped reading anybody's opinions on the Zelda franchise. That being said, the rudeness of people on the internet is part of why I disagree that the remake is woke. If people simply said that Angela's redesign is bad because it doesn't look anything like her, I would agree. But instead, they say that the game is woke because they made her fat and ugly, or that she looks like a man. I don't get that, since the only part of her that's fatter is her face. The rest of her body looks exactly the same, and she's even wearing the same outfit. If this is Bloober Team's attempt at adding a fat character, then man, they are doing a bad job at being inclusive. Sometimes I see why people think she looks like a man, as much as I hate to say it, but other times she looks so close to the original that I don't even know what you'd do to change her design. Besides, does this really affect the story at all? Maybe you could argue that her father wouldn't rape her if she was a biological man or if she was just ugly, but I don't know much about the psychology of stuff like this, nor do I really want to read into a bunch of that, but let's just not talk about it because I also don't know really what to say with that subject matter. Oh right, I forgot I said that earlier. I'll just say this. This idea that ugly people are safe from rape bothers me, but there's other people out there who would have a lot more to say about that than I would, so I'll just leave it to them. Now, some people have said that the reason they're upset about Angela's redesign isn't because they want to jerk it to her, but instead just that the design is inaccurate to the original game. And I believe that for some people, but for the people trying to fix her design on the internet, I've gotta say their version is even further off than the remake, which they also keep editing to look fatter so that they can make their jokes about her eating everything. Honestly, all the jokes people make about Angela being fat in the remake are just embarrassing. I don't even think I'm angry at them at this point, it's just like, God, you're just making yourself look so dumb, I'm sorry. People have also said that Maria's design is woke because she has a different outfit on and she has a man jaw. Her new outfit does cover up her midriff, but I still think it gets the idea across, though maybe the jacket could be a bit more open. I mainly just see it as a modern version of her outfit, like how the Mortal Kombat characters' designs have updated over time, but you can select their classic outfits in some of the games, and they're just simpler and brighter colored. I kinda see Maria's outfit in a similar way. Now, the thing about her looking trans, I won't lie, I can't see it at all. I wish men could look that pretty, but unfortunately if a man actually looked like that in reality, everyone would say they looked like a woman instead. It makes me wonder if maybe we're in Silent Hill right now and everyone's seeing completely different designs. Anyways, some stray thoughts before I move on. If the characters were redesigned to add diversity, then wouldn't they have done something about most of the characters being white and blonde? They didn't even change the hair color of anyone, which makes it harder for me to believe that any of this was done to be woke. There's two scenes involving Maria, one where she pulls a key out of her cleavage, and one where she helps James open a fridge that he couldn't open himself. Both of these scenes are in both versions of the game. They didn't remove the key scene for the remake, nor was the fridge scene something they added in the remake. Remember Shadow of the Colossus? That game got a remake back in 2018 and they changed the face of Wander, the protagonist. Comparing them side by side, the new one is a bit rounder and pudgier and their eyelashes look more prominent. I expected to find people complaining about the remake being woke because they feminized Wander, but surprisingly nobody was accusing Bluepoint of having an agenda. I haven't looked super deep into this, so maybe there were some complaints that I just haven't found yet, but so far every discussion thread I've found about it has been clean. Hell, I've even found people saying the new design looks more androgynous, and yet nobody complains about the game being woke. It honestly confuses the hell out of me to see people being so reasonable about something, especially nowadays. I get that the Shadow of the Colossus remake came out in 2018, but have things really changed that much in 6 years? Point is, it's fine to not like the redesigns. It's fine to criticize them. It's even fine to say that the characters look like men if that's what you really think. But when you complain about politics and say that this is some agenda being pushed, then it turns from a discussion into a drunken bar fight where nobody can even stand upright. I worry that hearing people talk about this game so often before I actually played it messed up my understanding of the story. People talk a lot about the sexual themes of the game, and now that I've actually played it, I have to ask, where did any of you get this from? Yes, there are sexual themes in Silent Hill 2, what with the abstract daddy, the enemy designs, and Maria. But the stuff I always heard about was James's repressed sexual frustration, and that one scene of Pyramid Head. Those are the two least concrete parts of the story, yet that's always what people talk about with this game. The Pyramid Head scene in particular, so many people say that he's raping the mannequins here, but Masahiro Ito has stated that that's not what's going on. I probably shouldn't solely use Ito's tweets as sources, but the main thing is that people describe vague details about the story as if they're clear-cut. I also don't get why people say the town called the characters there to teach them a lesson. The more I learn about this series as a whole, the more ridiculous this becomes. Why the hell would the town care about whether humans are good or bad people? It's a town. Yes, it summons monsters relating to people's trauma, but not in Silent Hill 1. In that game, everything relates to Alessa, even though Harry is the protagonist. Going back to those Ito tweets, it sounds like if anything, the town's trying to make James forget what he did, and Pyramid Head is the only one concerned with showing James the truth. Also, here's a tweet from Ito saying basically the same thing. Alright, I'll stop using his tweets now. Now for all the things that I wanted to talk about but couldn't fit into the other segments. I like how some of the billboards just say "your ad" on them. because I've seen a lot of those empty billboards before on road trips. It looks a little like a placeholder texture, but that doesn't really matter too much to me. The health drink in the pause menu kinda looks like a bottle of hot sauce to me. When I played through Born from a Wish, I thought that my shadows in one hallway were an enemy because a bug attacked me right as a shadow got to an angle where it looked like someone right behind me. Unfortunately, I don't have anything else to say about Born from a Wish. I wish I did, but I feel like the most interesting thing about that is the story, and I don't really have anything to say about that. That part where you have to put all your items in a shelf to use the elevator, I thought that I only had to put most of my items away, and which ones I kept would affect which ending I got. For example, I thought maybe if you kept the knife, you'd be more likely to get the in water ending, while keeping health items would help you get the leave ending. I was disappointed to find that you just put every item in the shelf, but whatever. It does make me wonder though, since the action to take all of your items back out of the shelf is just one button press, then why did they make you put every single item in individually? Wouldn't it make more sense to just have the same button press for both times? Also, why does the employee elevator only hold one person? I figure this is the elevator the cleaning service would use so that their big cart of cleaning supplies wouldn't get in people's way, but you can't even keep a key in your pocket. Honestly, I'm surprised you don't have to remove your clothes to get on it safely. This one cutscene of James taking his flashlight out seems to be missing some keyframes for the flashlight. And in this other cutscene with Angela, you can see a piston through the door. I've seen many people say that if James Sunderland is ever represented by an actor, then it should be Mads Mikkelsen. I agree, although I'd like to also point out Matt Smith, who played the 11th Doctor in Doctor Who. I mean, just compare him to James Sunderland's official render. I did notice how Angela's head is animated when she says, "Lost?" It really only works with the weird-ass delivery. I mean, look at it in the HD collection.
Lost.
In the end, I'm glad I played Silent Hill 2. I would say it was worth every cent, but I pirated it. But I will say, if it was up on Steam, I probably wouldn't buy it for anything over $20, but I'm just going based on my reaction to Silent Hill Homecoming being available for $40 on Steam. To be fair, I've heard that that game sucks, and $40 is a lot to pay just to see what I think about a potentially bad game. Anyways, consider me a Silent Hill fan now. Or don't, maybe the fact that I only played this game recently means I can never be a fan to you. I've seen Zelda fans say that YouTubers who started with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom and went back to play the rest of the series aren't true fans. And I say that if someone's willing to play the entire series just to have full context when expressing their opinions on it, then you should consider yourself lucky that you don't have to deal with Persona 5 fans, and anyone who says that they're a fan of a game that they've never played before. But if you're thinking that just one game isn't enough for me to be a Silent Hill fan, then don't worry. I procrastinated on making this video for so long that I had time to finish Silent Hill 1 and 3 already. So yeah, see you again when I make videos about those games.
What was that?
Okay, I feel like I need to explain a little bit about that video. I started making this when I finished playing Silent Hill 2, and it has been like months since. I've played Silent Hill 1, 3, and 4, and I downloaded Silent Hill Origins to play, but I kinda messed something up with it, and now I have like an undeletable version of it on my computer. But point is, yeah, this took a while. I didn't have a very good plan with it. You know, you might notice that the recording quality changes a bunch. That's because it was done in multiple takes. You know, I started editing the video first, and then I added in all the voicing later, and kind of had to rework the script multiple times. You know, some sections weren't originally going to be in there, but then I added them because I realized I had stuff to say. Like, the story bit got added pretty late into this. Yeah, if you're wondering why this video is so weird, that's why, but I mean, it's the first kind of thing like this that I've done, so it makes sense that it's kind of a dumpster fire. I'm definitely going to put more planning into the later videos if I ever make more in this style, which I do plan on doing so, because I have a lot to say about Silent Hill 1 and 3. Kinda had to stop myself from saying a lot of it in this video, because I also kinda have more to say about Silent Hill 2 as well, but I wanted this video to be about my original perspective on just playing Silent Hill 2, whereas some of the things I want to say about this game relate more so to the other games. But yeah, I'm gonna write the script first for the Silent Hill 1 and 3 videos, and then I'll put it all together and record it in one setting. No, I wanted to replay in Silent Hill 2, the radio... Shit! As the bosses are in Silent Hill so far, though, I think there's better ways to achieve that. Fuck! Sorry. Having to fight a bunch of enemies, having to buy the... Anyways, the thing that... Shit, sorry, hold on a minute. Okay, no, never mind. I mean, look at him. That's the guy the first of which... Shit. People also say that they... Shit. Nor did they add the fridge scene and it, like, wasn't there in the original. Because of every slightly different place I placed his eyebrow... Okay, wow, that's a terrible sentence. That game got a remake back in 2018, and they changed the face of Wander, the protagonist. God damn it. That game got a remake back in 2018, and they... That game got a remake back in 2018, and they changed the face of... That game got a remake back in 2018, and they changed the face of... I can't pronounce changed. I don't know why. I guess my throat's too dry? Why does that rhyme? What the fuck? Most enemies in the game are silent, save for some ambient noises, and music only plays when enemies are nearby. I actually managed to convince myself that I wasn't stairs. My feet are completely asleep. Controls and had to adjust to these. I can't speak. I pronounce T's as D's and TH as V and F. I can't pronounce S's right. Maybe I should have paid attention to that speech therapist in, like, elementary school or whatever. That was really the thing that scared me the most about this area, knowing that that bastard was coming up. I also don't get why people say the town called the characters there to... Shit.